Right, are we good?
Good.
We're rolling. Right, I've got a little bit of an introduction for you, Giles. I'm going to introduce you some research that I've done.
Okay.
So get ready.
Hopefully it's all true.
So today's guest has seen firsthand what it takes to grow both as a leader and as part of an ambitious business shaping the future of the built environment. When Giles Blight joined Bailey Partnership in 2013, 4 people were in the architecture team, and fast forward to now, he's the executive director leading over 50 architectural professionals. For those of you that don't know, Bailey Partnership is a multidisciplinary consultancy specialising in everything that makes up the built environment. They have 13 offices nationwide and recently ranked number 64 in Building Magazine's top 150 consultants for 2025. Whoop, whoop. So they're a business making a real impact. And in today's episode, we're going to be deep diving into Giles's journey, understanding how Bailey Partnership continues to evolve and getting a glimpse into the future. So Giles, welcome to the pod.
Thank you very much for having me.
How was that? Was it all right?
It was okay. I do need to correct you on
Correct
something
me,
which
Giles.
I don't want to straight away. But
please do.
When I joined Bailey's in 2013, I think the turnover was around 4 million.
Yeah.
The number in the team architecturally was 11, but I was the 3rd chartered architect.
Oh, right. That's where I've got you.
Yeah, so that's probably where the confusion might have come in.
Yeah.
But apart from that, it was all
Do you want to
perfect.
do that again? Do you want to start again?
Do you want me to? I was going to say, no, I can't do that again.
And to be honest, I did have to look that up anyway.
Oh,
so.
did you? Oh, okay. Let me help then.
Fair enough. Well, welcome, Giles. Where did it all start for you then? Where does your journey start, would you say?
Bizarrely, I did work experience. Is this called the drawing board?
Yeah.
Well, ironically, the work experience was at Plymouth City Council's Civic Centre when I was 14 in the architectural department. And it was a different way of working back then, wasn't it? It's just the work experience person. Let's just chuck them over there and ignore them. So I spent a whole week tracing drawings on a drawing board, which I just found very boring. And it put me off wanting to become an architect. So I went down the sort of more creative route, did an art foundation course, ended up going to Brighton University to do 3-dimensional design. So it's a really non-traditional route. Studied at Brighton, and my degree show was, I don't know, I suppose it sort of interlinked man-made objects and things with organic forms, and sort of investigated how something that's man-made can fit in the environment and, seamlessly reflect the surroundings, but also how everything that's man-made almost regresses back to being organic over time. Like Longshore Drift, if you chucked a man-made brick in there, by the time you got down there, it would be a pebble type thing. So it was all quite architectural and all about sort of built environment and man-made materials. And I was quite fortunate, really, because someone looked around the degree show and I got a business card, and that doesn't happen to many people. So I went to an interview with BDP in London, and they offered me a job, which was quite good, really. That didn't happen to many of the graduates. Initially, I think I wanted to go into sort of prop design or film design and set design. So there was always that sort of interest in it. But so I started at BDP and I was initially making models, but in making the models, you're really involved in the early concept stages. And I've always been quite good with sketching and, realising my ideas from my sketchbook into building them into 3D dimensions. So when we were working on competitions, we'd do one option and then we'd do another option, and then I'd just start making a third option, which, they'd say, oh, we don't like that, but then ask me to make something very similar. So I quickly sort of moved from model making sort of more into that sort of front end elements of stuff. And I thought it was bizarre, really, because obviously BDP was a multidisciplinary company. And what really sort of impacted me was how to take when you've got a little design that you're building and making yourself, it's fine. But when it's a building, you've got a sketch idea, you do need the whole multidisciplinary team to really make that sketch a reality. So yeah, after a while, probably 2003, I found the RIBA in-office learning course, spoke to my sort of mentor and boss, and he said, yeah, definitely, we want you to pursue that. So then they sort of paid me, and it's sort of like an open university type thing where you're working full time, you're you know when your exams are, so you do exams, you've got coursework deadlines, but it's only 2 or 3 times a year, so you can.
Is it a bit like the apprenticeships that?
It's a bit like that, really, or open university type thing. But what it means is you've got to coordinate your workload, because I was, by not long into it, I was sort of leading on projects. So you've got to coordinate your work program with your life program, which are making me sound too organised, with your, study and work program, which has really helped with program management and, the leadership and, how organised you need to be to probably do what I've ended up doing, really, which I don't do much sketching now, unfortunately, but I do organise things relatively well. And that was a really good basis of it. So,
I'm just going to jump in with the whole model making, because I'm quite curious about that. Is that something which is done sort of so much still? Like, is that a bit of a luxury now to have that in sort of like the architecture side of things?
I mean, a lot of it's moved away from that, but I think clients love a model, don't they? They like to see it. You can walk round, we're at the Cornwall Construction Summit on Thursday, and we've got a VA headset, and we're walking people around one of our net zero new build schools. But, that's exciting, although it makes me feel a bit ill, to be honest. But
I'm not a fan. It's quite in your face.
I think it's exciting. I like it.
I mean, it's good as a design tool, but the models, especially for the early sort of concepts, and so they can see how it sits in the landscape, and you can quickly switch things in and out, I think does still have a place.
Definitely has a place. Would you do that for every project?
No,
just
not generally. No, just the sort of larger ones, or the ones where the landscape is integral to the scheme. I mean, at the university, obviously the chap that you introduced us to recently, he did a lot of work which was a mixture of sketchbook work, computer aided work, and model making work to evolve his ideas. And I think just that way of thinking enables you to really start to visualize how a building can go together, because a building is, it's just a sketch. I've got
it's an idea, isn't it?
It's an idea.
It does feel to me like a model making is like a really pure form of architecture, because you sort of like, you're putting it together in a slightly different sense. You actually have like the model in front of you, and then you try and make it. It's the same as like drawing it up and then making it. Yeah,
it's like problem solving. It's a bit like Revit now. If you're modelling it, you realise some of the complications as you do it. In those days, we were doing the same thing, but more on a large sort of more master planning scale, rather than, because you can see it in reality. And also you can see it was all done, with card and balsa and stuff like that, but you can see the contours quite easily linking in, and, the levels and everything else, even though it was just basic floor plates and then sort of reinforced mesh ceilings and acetate and, a lot of Yahoo glue and
do
whatever
Bailey
else.
Partnerships still do models? Is that something just done?
We've not done models for a while, because most things are computer generated now, but we have done in the past, I'm not sure whether BDP do, because when I moved out, we did sort of invest in more, thorough equipment and things.
Feels like that's done now almost, doesn't it? That sort of thing, especially with like...
Possibly, yeah. I know you go to some exhibitions and they're there, but I think they probably made retrospective, perhaps. But it was a crucial thing on my progression, because I think they realised how I think and how you can take a sort of conceptual, almost form-based design and then make it a reality. And the reality is trying to then take that and make it meet the engineering and regulatory requirements, which can stem your creativity a bit. So it's always good to think a bit outside the box before you have to then be brought back inside the real world.
Yeah.
Definitely. So you started off like in that, well, in an architecture environment massively, but maybe that was your journey, like with the model making to becoming an architect. But then almost you could say like the real start of the journey was when you started this course, when you were very intentional about potentially becoming an architect, weren't you?
Yeah.
How did that sort of go for you? And sort of when you became an architect, what sort of changed? Did you less model making? Was it?
I suppose because I'd done quite a lot of the front end elements with the art college background and the 3-dimensional design, and then the sort of 2-3 years of sort of front end concept, which was all the competition wins and stuff like that, which was really good fun. I mean, it's, late nights and stuff like that, but I sort of thrive on that sort of work pressure, really. It's sort of a bit of a buzz it gives me. So it was when I sort of got put on a building to actually detail it up. So I think the first project was the Learning Resource Centre in opposite City Airport in London for University of East London. So yeah, it was a knowledge dock building and then a learning resource centre with a sort of floating lecture theatre sort of poking out, and we had the sloped glass, so the reflection sort of came in, and it was really, you had to really coordinate the structure because it was steel frame with the M&E, which had all exposed M&E in between acoustic ceiling and things. And that sort of really brought home how integrated multidisciplinary working can really benefit the client and end user. And, just some of the complexities of the detailing, it's even worse now, but, to get the U values, which is, the thermal performance of a building, the construction of the wall and the roof is really thick, but, as an architect, or I don't think any architect likes to see a big, thick roof profile. So just trying to work out how you detail that with the geometry and things like that was a real challenge, and something that surprisingly I was quite good at. But it's also just listening to people, like when you're doing 3-dimensional design, we had things that we had to, pick a client and design something for them. Architecture is all about people, isn't it? Whatever we do is for people, whether it be a school, a house, a hospital, you've got those stakeholders and they're sort of steering the brief. And then you sell the vision to them, but it is very much their end product. So it sort of made me aware that you've got to think, and also it enlightened me on how my creative background and sketchbook way of working really could benefit my architectural journey, which previously I think I thought it was more of a academic job for the future, whereas I was quite lazy at school, to be fair. I think I'd sort of developed later on in life in wanting to do well, and that was just probably come out of interest in what I was doing.
I think what's really nice about your journey is it's all stemmed from your passion, really, hasn't it? Like you went to the Cornwall Council. Was it Cornwall Council?
Plymouth
City Council, sorry, to do sketches on a drawing board, and you didn't enjoy it, and then you followed your passion, and then it's led you to where you are. Do you think if you went back and you did go to uni and you did have the traditional architecture route, do you think you would feel differently about it all now? Or would you still be doing it even?
Possibly. I mean, I'm a bit of an advocate for apprenticeships and things, just because I think just juggling, I had a young family at the time, so I had a full-time job doing this and had a young family and a very understanding wife, because I was busy doing everything else. But just that program or life management, just to be able to hit your deadlines, still do well at work and progress at work, was kind of the instrumental learning thing. And I'm not sure, I appreciate students do still have jobs and other things, but they don't have all those other commitments, and you do advance more, which is why the traditional architecture route, obviously you do 3 years at uni to do your degree, then you do at least a year in placement, or you tend to, and then 2 years to do your sort of masters, and then you've got to work in to do your part 3, which is obviously more contract administration and that sort of thing. So they do encourage it, But we've got quite a few people that come to us in their year out, and they're still working for us now, which is great, so they're on sort of, instead of working in a bar or Morrison's or wherever, they've come in and
feels a bit more like an apprenticeship, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's staying with us because they're learning more. And also we do encourage them. We're all, everyone post-COVID's about working from home, but for those guys, they need to be in the office because they're not going to really benefit from it if they're at home necessarily. Especially if they're at home all the time. So I think being the in-office learning thing, I think is crucial to the development of anyone, because really you want to be quite a rounded architect. You don't want to just be, in my view, you don't want to be a concept or academic one. If you're an architect, you want to build stuff. So that means it needs to be viable. So you can't just go off on an architectural whim and draw something that isn't going to stack up financially. The client's not going to be able to afford it, or it's not going to get the return, or when they sell it, it's not going to cover the cost, So you do need to, and that's something we're good at, again, as an integrated multidisciplinary team. We've got QSs. So, we're always managing our clients' expectations. And even if they're an external QS, you can just pop upstairs and say, I'm thinking of this, what do you think? And they're like, no, that's, that the price of that's gone up ridiculous amounts, so why don't you look at this? And, it sort of adds that value to the clients that we work with as well.
Yeah, it's different tools at your disposal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about Bailey Partnership. So you joined in 2013. Talk us through that.
Yeah, so I was, originally I relocated in, I think it was 2011. And I'd just done this great Wellington Academy, which was one of the last building schools for the future when the government had more money to do. It was quite nice schools and things. And it was quite an interesting project. It had a boarding house because it was linked to Wellington Academy, which we did out of cross-laminated timber. And that was probably in about 2009. And then we had a massive secondary school and a shooting range, which was quite bizarre. I'd never designed a shooting range before. But after that, the credit crunch came, and I was put on a project which was 50% new build and 50% refurb. And my daughter was, I don't know, probably 2 or 3, getting to near the school age. And my son was 1, and we were like, okay, well, what should we do? We need to think. So we looked at going back to Brighton, but Brighton was a great place as a student, but not really for a young family, really. And it got a bit more, I don't know whether I just got older and more sensible, but it didn't
trendy.
Yeah, maybe. Let's call it trendy. And also I thought, well, if I'm commuting all the way in from Brighton or Lewis or wherever we were looking, and the prices for housing and stuff was ridiculous, as you can imagine. So I just thought, well, my mum's and my family are in Devon and Cornwall. Let's just move back this way. So we decided to move, but obviously because it was 2011 and things took a bit more time from the credit crunch of 2008 and 9 in London to, no one was really looking. So anyway, I secured a job at LSN Architects, which I think was one of the oldest architects in the country, but it only had 1 architect and 2 technicians. So really? I went from probably the biggest practice to the smallest, but it was really good. It was really good actually, because I learned, contract administration in a big practice. You don't really do that because there's people that do that all the time. I mean, obviously I shadowed someone for my part 3, but so it was really interesting. I worked there for a couple of years, but what it made me realize is I missed the integration of having a multidisciplinary team in-house. You're obviously collaborating still with civil and structural engineers and M&E engineers, etc. But I kind of missed it. So then a recruiter contacted me, and I moved across to Bailey's. Was the 3rd chartered architect, and it was really good fun because I missed London a bit. So the first few projects we were doing, I think working with Lewisham and Bromley doing their basic needs school expansions. So I was able to go back up to London and, deliver schemes up there, which were, quite good fun. And it was a mixture of sort of off-site volumetric. So it was all quite interesting. And yeah, then everything's just sort of evolved from there. So I joined in 2013, just sort of got my head down and worked like I always do. I think some of my previous experience of concept and competitions and bid writing and stuff like that at BDP really helped, because obviously I brought that quality to Bailey's and managed to win more work and help grow the team. And then I think in 2017 I was elevated to what's now executive director. At the time it was a partner, but so yeah, I joined the other architectural ED, and that was a while ago. And since then we've just continued to grow. Obviously we used to just travel up and down to Kent and service it. It was probably only in sort of 2015, 16 that we started putting architecture in Maidstone to prevent the travel. Obviously the biggest burden on our sort of aim to sort of get to be a negative carbon business is transport costs, unfortunately. So, we were like, well, we can't just keep driving up, and obviously staff don't like travelling that far all the time. So that's when we started putting architecture in Maidstone. And the growth of Bailey's, although it sounds 64th in the building magazine, I think we're the 20th largest architect in the UK as well, as part of that survey, which is pretty good, up 6 places. It's all been very organic. We've kind of just thought, and we've got this sort of rule that you can't just really put someone in one office. It doesn't really work. You need 3 people, sort of a leader, a doer, and then sort of an intermediate, really, just so they can all work off each other. And, you've got to have that creativity amongst a team of 3. So, yeah, Maidstone was the next one. Obviously, Bristol, there was already architecture there at the time. So it was very much a southwest-based business when I joined. And we've had architecture in Exeter for a while, but mostly the main team was at Plymouth and still is, to be fair, but Plymouth's at capacity. So hence we've got Cornwall, Torquay, Exeter, Bristol, Chichester, Bury St Edmunds, and Maidstone. So, and then obviously Bristol, it's probably about 8 or 9 people in Bristol now, which hopefully we can grow even more when we relocate it into central Bristol, which is going to be in January, I think.
I'm quite interested in like how the growth has actually gone, because I think I, started recruiting and like working alongside Bailey Partnership. Certainly seems like a very, very long time ago. And it was more like on the M&E side of things, but all like knew about Bailey Partnership from when I like started my recruitment career around like 2015. And like the growth from then to now has actually been fairly significant, hasn't it, really? If we say like at the start, well, there was like 15-ish, 20 people when you started in 2013 to the business that it is now, there's been an awful lot of change. How many people are there now?
We've got over 200 now. So, but in the architectural team, which were 11 when I joined, we've got 58 if you include the 2 EDs, which are obviously included in the 11. So that's quite a lot. And we've got, I think that's 17 chartered architects and 14 chartered architectural technologists. And then I think we've got 10 apprentices. And
so that's a lot of growth, isn't it? That's happened like really. So there must be like quite a bit of intention there, rather than it just being all organic and like, oh, there's another project, we'll get another few more people. Has it been in the plan?
Yeah, there was obviously a plan. There was a plan to become multidisciplinary, because when I joined, obviously you've mentioned M&E, we did building surveying, QS. We didn't do town planning at the time, and we didn't do civil and structural engineering. So we worked quite a lot with BSW, with and other companies locally, but the local firms, BSW kind of delivered most of our Bromley and Kent schools with us. Really? And then we had Arian Coles that were working with us down here on the Cornwall and Plymouth stuff. And it's just sort of opportunity came about, really, that we were like, well, we say we're multidisciplinary, but we can't be multidisciplinary, but we don't have civil and structural. So I think the opportunity came around that the owners wanted to sort of retire, and we'd work with the team, the staff, and the ethos was aligned, because at the end of the day, there's no point acquiring a business if the people aren't going to like it. You've got, the people are what Bailey Partnership is about. We're only successful because of everyone in the business. It's not because of me. It's not because of the other 6 EDs or the 15 directors. It's everyone in the business, and therefore, because we'd worked with BSW for so long, we knew that we worked in integrated models in the cloud and whatever else. It was quite a sort of seamless and no-brainer, really. It was just trying to agree the terms of the deal, really.
So that was a bit of a merger, wasn't it? You guys came together then, and it was easy because it almost felt like it was moving towards that with the projects you worked on, the people, you knew everyone there, that sort of thing. So was that when you say sort of things really became multidiscipline?
I'd say so. And then obviously the introduction of town planning, because that gets you in front of clients at an earlier stage, I think, and development. And, just employing good people, people, clients like working with people, don't they? They don't like necessarily working. So as long as you pick the right candidates and search the right talent or grow the right talent, which is something that we're very proud of, then I think the growth kind of happens, and just having more able people in different places. I mean, I'm slightly concerned about the growth now because we've got so many directors, 15 directors and 7 EDs, plus the SLT that we've just empowered, hopefully, a couple of weeks ago in the SLT conference. Everyone's, wanting to go out and continue to do the big work we do. But
so it's only going to get bigger and better,
hopefully,
isn't it?
But I mean, weirdly, 75% of our sort of turnover is repeat business. So, we're sort of financially stable in a sense because of that. And I'm not, obviously you're only as good as your last job. So, which is the same with anything in life, really, isn't it? So if we cock something up, then it could, sorry, my hands, then it could change things. So yeah, that's why we insure on structured CPD, make sure we stay ahead of the curve, because clients don't want people just to sit back. They want the best, don't they? So, and I suppose even the Building Safety Act, of 2022 has been quite good because of the way we worked. We always had that golden thread because we were always working in the cloud, even pre-COVID, because of the disciplines, the locations, and the multidisciplinary and integrated design stuff. So, yeah, I think it's sort of...
What's the benefits of multidiscipline sort of business for...
Well, it's just...
Or for a client, really, or just a general benefit?
You can't... I kind of briefly touched on it earlier. If you sketch something out, you can't evolve that sketch in a silo, I mean, these days, years ago, it probably would have just been the architect or the master builder or whatever we were referred to, and the structural engineer. But it quickly changed to really the M&E engineer, because it's all about how a building breathes and the sustainability and everything else. But these days, it's not just about that. It's about the landscape. So, if we're doing a housing scheme, a master plan, the first thing I do is meet our ecologist, not that we've got them in-house, but we partner with them, and take him and walk the site, because there's no point in me putting any pen to paper, because biodiversity net gain's a massive impact on viability for the client. So, you walk the site and he kind of says, well, don't touch there. That's going to be for biodiversity net gain. Put your development over there. And it's similar with orientation for building services engineering and building physics, so they can do that. So you kind of have all that sort of integration and impact in-house. And town planning, why would I design something that's 12-story when my internal town planner says, Giles, you can't really go over 8 stories? It sort of adds much more value.
Having all that in-house like advice and expertise in-house, that you can very quickly walk over to somebody over there and say, right, let's do this. You do it in the right sort of steps.
Yeah, it's collaboration, isn't it? I always say that design's like a funnel. So, you get all these ideas going in the top, client wants this, stakeholder wants that, architect wants this, M&E engineer wants that. And then you slowly sort of filter it down. And at the end, you've got this concept that works, which is sort of around RIBA stage 2, concept design. And then from there, you really need to get into the detail and, I'm a great advocate for 1 to 20 sections, because that's, key to the coordination of a building, really. That's where you see how the structure and the M&E fits in with the architecture and the architectural technology, really.
So I'm going to go on to like the winning work section, like part of the like this conversation, really. You kind of mentioned it there. Big part of your sort of business is repeat business, 75%. And that's just through doing a good job, I would imagine, keeping those relationships more and more, everything sort of generates. But how does like an engineering or an architecture or multidisciplinary business go out there and actually win work? Is it a case of like picking up the phone and cold calling people, or is it like connections off connections? How do you do it?
There's an element of that, element of networking, and other elements. We're on a lot of frameworks. So frameworks that our client can appoint us to. And
how do you, just to stop you there, how do you get on those frameworks? Is there an awful lot of work behind the scenes with like procurement and like bid writing and tendering?
There's quite a lot. So you go through a sort of SQ stage, and then they issue an ITT, which is an invitation to tender. And then you've got to sort of prove your capability and competency and everything else, which is, but they're a lot more focused on SMEs these days, I think. So
why is that?
I don't know. I think it's because of localism and everything else, and it's encouraging it. But they're trying to. But there is still quite a lot of hoops to jump through. So I don't think some of the smaller practices that maybe not ISO accredited or have ISO 19001 or ISO 19650. It makes it a bit more difficult, but. Then you can join in with some of those guys. So we do sort of JV with smaller practices as well.
That's good.
Not that we're huge. But,
how much of your work is like public and like on these frameworks? Is it a big percentage?
I say, it probably is. It is on our company risk. You know, if we don't get on some of the frameworks we're on, how does that client appoint us?
Yeah.
And there's quite a few sort of coming up for renewal. We do quite a lot through the SBS framework and the LHC framework as an example. And we're just writing the Crown Commercial framework, which is due in on the 20th, I think. So
who does that? Is there like, have you got a designated like bid writer? Or
we've got a bid writing team, but I tend to do quite a lot of bids.
Do you?
I kind of quite enjoy it.
Do you? What do you enjoy about it?
I don't know.
Tell me.
I don't know. I was awful at English at school, to be fair. But I seem to be all right at it. I say all right.
Yeah. What advice have you got for people doing all these sort of like bid writing? Because to be honest, it's something which we've looked at recently, actually. So I'll be curious to get your thoughts on it. We've done seminars and stuff.
The key is you've got to read the question and answer the question bespokely. You can't just, we do have a submission database, but you can't, on these big frameworks, use those. You've got to be very specific to the question. You need to pick the right case studies.
Yeah.
You need to explain it with reference to case studies, so they know you're just not waffling on about what you think, it's what you know. And really just, the whole lessons learned thing, which is what life's about, isn't it, really, is, just continuous improvement, which we all need to strive to do through life.
I think with like those sort of frameworks and that sort of stuff, it's, I was just saying, like, for our example, we want to do a lot more of that and try and get on there, but it seems like a really big task to start off with. But once you get things set up, and obviously the more you do it, the more you've got like the templates, the more you've got the examples, and you obviously, get that. Is it in like the business plan to do more like public work and more of that framework kind of?
It is. We've got a framework committee that basically are all about retaining the frameworks and building on the frameworks as well. Because obviously as a PM team as well and QS, we do use frameworks to tender for projects as well. So it's sort of not just for us winning work, it's knowing about frameworks to get our clients better value as well.
Yeah.
So it works both ways, really.
Yeah.
But doing a framework bid is quite laborious, and I do walk out into the office and feel a bit crazy sometimes because you're just sat there sort of blinkered, trying to.
How long will it take for you to do some of these bids?
It depends. Some of the answers are easier if you've done that sort of question before. It's relatively easy. It's when you're, trying to add that extra little twist, and I always like to do some sort of diagrams that relate to the text that I've written as well.
Okay.
Which
Well, it's ways to stand out, isn't
which
it?
for someone like me, I'd much rather look at a diagram and go, okay, they understand the question than perhaps read all the answers.
Yeah.
Types of learning, isn't it?
But the hardest thing is doing it in the word limit.
Really, I can imagine.
Yeah, you know,
But you got your sketches. There's no sketch limit.
Well, no, true, but they do caveat that now as well. Actually,
Do they?
Yeah.
Do you do? I was on this seminar about like procurement and this sort of stuff. Is like, do you have more success with much more local, like projects, tenders, that sort of thing? And do you just do as many tenders as you can, or do you cherry pick very much the ones that you want to work on?
You've got to sort of review it, sort of go or no go type thing. You know, there's no point in, you know, we don't want to be busy fools, do we? So you do need to look at it and, pick the right tender. Having said that, if you're trying to, because I always think we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. So really 20% of the architectural team's turnover can't be in any one discipline, because if that goes, then we're going to be in trouble. So, you know,
is that a rule?
Not a rule, but it's something
you're conscious of.
Yeah, something I'm conscious of, really.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty sensible rule, isn't it?
Yeah. So if you're trying to, I don't know, expand your, like that, we did a bit of housing when I joined, but then we did so much education, housing dropped off. So when we were trying to sort of build housing again, which we're now doing quite a lot of, you know, I was doing quite a lot of housing bids just to, you know, get the feedback, and then you go again. You know, it's that sort of whole management of accepting sort of imperfect progress, really. You know, you only grow if you get that positive feedback, and, you know, you do make a mistake. So there is an element of doing that. But also, from going back to your original question, I suppose, in terms of repeat work, we go to a lot of networking events. Obviously, the construction industry is quite social, but we do a lot of, it's sort of our social value, but also people like to do it. So I'm on the committee for Constructing Excellence in Cornwall. I was chair for 3 years. We've got someone on the committee for Exeter Construction Group. We're sort of active in CIAT, COB, RIBA.
So you're pretty out there.
So we're sort of out there, and, you know, although I'm getting a bit old now and don't like it quite so much, some of the younger ones are sort of, you know, enjoy doing it. You know, the RICs and the RIBAs and everything like that. So, and, you know, people like doing business with people they know. And also when clients leave one local authority, as an example, and go to another, they tend to come back to us.
With your, maybe not sure about the words, but like your best clients, and like, I don't know if they are, if you would say like your best clients are like the people, or like the clients on the frameworks, but how do you make sure because a lot of it is repeat business for you, but how do you make sure you do a really good job every time? Is it purely through like the quality of the work, or do you do anything different to any other businesses to look after clients or make sure the accounts sort of stay with you?
I think, you know, we don't permanently ask for additional fees, which probably is a detriment as well as a positive, I suppose. But, you know, projects sometimes do evolve, and, you know, but the key thing is probably the training we give the staff, so that the client knows that they've got, you know, people that are actually trained and competent to do what they're doing. So they do tend to come back, and also the relationships. So, you know, Exeter School, I met at LSN. They then sort of followed me to Bailey's, and I've sort of passed them down to one of our senior architects, and they just permanently phone him up. And it's not massive work, but it's sort of a pipeline of work. And some of the projects you'd think, well, why is Bailey Partnership doing that with their, you know, 21 million turnover? But you still do it because you enjoy working with them, and, you know, it's sort of giving back to the community as well, really, to a point. And we do like other things, like in COVID, just before COVID, actually, I met Derriford Hospital, and this ICU nurse called Kate, she's been, I think might be a dame now or something, but she was so inspiring. And she took me to this courtyard, which had like pallets that basically were formed planters and stuff. And it you know, they'd obviously had really good intentions to create this rehab garden with no budget. And they were like, can you help us do this? And we were like, okay, well, let's do that. And that's sort of another thing, we didn't really get anything other than personal enjoyment and satisfaction and social value out of it. But we helped them, and we climbed Brownwilly in Cornwall to raise money and became rehab legends and stuff like that. And we designed this rehab garden and garden room, which was instrumental through COVID. And then I think a couple of weeks ago, we had a sort of post-occupancy evaluation meeting, and it was a project that started as a garden. Then there was a garden room because it was like, well, what if it's raining and someone's dying and wants their dog to come in, So we were like, okay, well, let's create a garden room, and the space isn't that big. And then infection control were like, well, if you've got a room, you need to make sure you have all these air changes to meet the HTMs and HBNs, and which is the technical stuff you need to comply with healthcare. So it sort of evolved into a project that started as a garden, but ended up being, a garden room, which was really a controlled environment, but you could open all the doors and windows and it could be a completely natural environment. And although that put a pressure on the budget, and we had to do more fundraising, we had to do this, we had to do that. In the post-occupancy feedback, Kate said that was actually a real positive in the end, because it gives them so much more flexibility. So someone who does need to have a sterile environment can be wheeled into this room on their bed, and they can look up at the sky and smell the flowers and the plants coming through the wall and that sort of thing. And that sort of feedback, I think, from clients and just being put out there. So at the moment, I'm writing a paper on how that sort of design process can feed into the hospital program, which, I didn't do it for that reason. I did it just for the fact that it was a nice thing to do, and we enjoy helping people because we're all humans. So I think things...
That's a great example, isn't
things
it? Really?
Just sort of happen, don't they?
Yeah.
Everything happens for a reason, I think.
Yeah.
Good or bad.
Big fan of that. Yeah, big fan of that. Oh, that's a great example, isn't it? Again, it's something which we're sort of talking an awful lot more about. How can we do more for our clients and, make them better accounts? And I mean, that would go a huge, go an awful long way doing what you've done there, just other bits and bobs, isn't it? So,
yeah. And it's funny that, because I go up there for some treatment most weeks, and they had Shetland ponies in there last Christmas dressed up as reindeers. So it's just a bizarre place right in the middle of a hospital. I don't know how they got the ponies through the hospital, but hey, that's another story.
That's good. How else would you, I think you might have answered the question, but how else would you go out and win work if you were right, let's be a bit more intentional about winning work. We want to grow. Is there anything that you do in particular in your role?
Yeah, you do. Well, what we've done recently is I've sort of allocated a head of each sector, so head of education, head of healthcare, head of whatever, and I've asked them all to write a strategic business plan for each sector. So defence and everything, and then I've tried to dovetail that into a cohesive architectural 5-year business plan, and then it's really just empowering people to go off and spear those. Those sectors really. So, there's obviously contractor clients, there's obviously local authority clients, healthcare clients, private development clients, not so much at the moment. I think the margins on, getting a development to stack up with the planning process and B&G and everything else is so tricky that has slowed of recent years, although it is picking up because obviously Labour are trying to meet the housing targets, aren't they? So it's really just been quite clever and pinpointing where you're trying to target. So obviously I've got a map with my offices on, and I'm strategically trying to target certain areas or local, healthcare trusts around Manchester or whatever. And you just try to find a way to open the door really.
With these people that you've allocated, would they go at it would it be very much would they go at it right, we're doing this area? Would it be, I think you mentioned project specific, it sounds like for each sector head, but would they go after right, this person, we're doing a bit of work with this, we want to do that much more with them and be very focused on them and sort of put all their time and attention in a person, a client, a project, or would it be a bit more scattery?
No, possibly it would be focused. So, if we're getting quite a lot of work from, I don't know, this client, then it would be make sure we,
spend more time with them, look after them.
We've got a clients in Edinburgh, and that's why we opened the Edinburgh office, because they were like, well, we work with them all over the country. And then they said, well, we've got work in Edinburgh. We're like, okay, well, let's open an office in Edinburgh to help service you. So there is that element, but also it is sort of, you've got to pinpoint certain, I don't know, NHS trusts or universities. I mean, universities obviously struggling financially at the moment, but so I think it is got to be quite strategic, and we meet sort of monthly and talk through what we've done and what we need to do, because obviously you've got the day job, you've got to do fee earning work as well as to pay the bills, as well as looking to the future on how you're going to pay the bills in the future.
So you have like a quarterly strategy, like marketing or business development meeting, which are very intentional about certain clients, certain projects, these sort of things.
How does like marketing fold into that? Are you like strategic with the way that you promote
I think we
yourselves?
probably need to be slightly more strategic. I don't think our website's great. It is under review at the moment, because a few people say, crikey, I didn't realise Bailey was so big, or, you know, because we came from a QS sort of BS firm in 1971 or wherever we were established. Weirdly, we were established in Totnes, which I didn't know until about a year ago.
Went to Totnes for the first time on Saturday.
Oh, did you?
Lovely place.
No, it is quite picturesque, isn't it, Totnes? I've lost my train of thought now.
Marketing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Are you involved quite heavily in the marketing, or is somebody like come in to sort of do that specifically?
All EDs and directors are, well, any of the SLT are involved in marketing. We quite like going out there. We do have some business development people, but I think, you know, a lot of the time it's about personal relationships. So it is about getting out there, and we've got more of a strategic digital marketing plan. I think we've realised that if you look at our social media, we're very much about people and well-being, which is probably why we're in the Good Employers Guide for 2025.
I have noticed that, actually, to cut in there. There's a lot about people on your LinkedIn and your social media.
But not much about projects. So we're consciously trying to do that now. So that, in answer to your question, our strategic focus will be on trying to push and sell, you know, what we've done in each of the sectors. So that will be coming out. So there'll be slightly less on people. But, you know, if you're doing something really well and, you know, you've got below national average in staff retention and you're, you know, growing your own people in-house, then
shout about it.
You want to shout about it, really.
Oh, definitely. It's finding a good mix of both, isn't it? Because, like, for example, that hospital story, that would be amazing to be promoting digitally, and like on your website, socials, there'd be so many people that would be interested in that, and it just adds to your social value.
That is a massive story, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's probably the smallest little healthcare project we've done, but, you know, it's got so much good about it, and how something so small can grow, really. And that's what we like with, you know, the staff that we've got, really. So we do like to empower them and nurture them in, you know, like I was really at Bailey Partnership. So yeah, we sort of look within, because there is I mean, you mentioned M&E earlier. Trying to recruit into M&E at the moment is quite difficult. So you know, and architecturally is probably not quite as difficult as some of the other disciplines we have, but we still do look to grow within. So when I went for my interview at Bailey Partnership, the admin assistant who was on the desk is now a chartered architectural technologist.
Love stories like that.
You know, one of the other EDs started at 16. He's now an ED. So there's no glass ceilings. Sharon was just telling me before you called me in that Leon, who was in our administration team, he's now moving over to the building surveying team. And then Megan's moved into the HR team. So we do look within to then help grow. And the good thing about that is just, you know, people do enjoy it. And the reason we retain our staff is because of the Bailey family. And it sounds a bit cheesy, I know, but the sort of family ethos. So,
well, let's talk about that then, because like recruitment and like culture, environment, they all go sort of fairly hand in hand, don't they? And it's a massive part of like growing a business. And, you know, you guys have obviously done that right, considering, you know, the sort of growth in the last 10 years or so. But what is the sort of strategy with recruitment? Like how do you, I know you sort of nurture from within, that's a big part of it, but how do you sort of bring people in?
Well, we hope that all the social media stuff encourages people to join. I think it's difficult at the moment this time of year, isn't it? Because I doubt people want to leave before Christmas. But I think the key is, I interviewed someone yesterday actually, and he said something that was quite fitting. So I think he said he saw it somewhere. So if you could take a garlic clove and put it in a satsuma, it fits, but it doesn't belong there. So the key is trying to find, they can be a really good candidate, but if they don't fit and belong, then you're sort of wasting everyone's time. So we spend quite a lot of time trying to find those right people, and then empowering them to do so, and just to keep, every office has a social fund, so they do their own thing. We just give so much money per head, and there's a social committee that aren't our directors at all. They can just do what they want within reason, obviously, from a health and safety perspective. But and I think that helps. And we encourage staff and family barbecues, because if you obviously bring the families along, we do quite a lot of health and well-being, surfing and cooking and walking. And
so is it for you guys more so about like the actual person rather than the skills? Because
I think so, because I think everyone, like in the architectural team particularly, we've all got our strengths and weaknesses. And it's recognizing those strengths and weaknesses. And, maybe as a standalone person, I may not be particularly good at something, but as a team, we're really good. And it's just getting people to understand their potential. And that, I think, goes back to sort of what I learned at BDP, which was, I was personally responsible at BDP, but then there was a sort of collective responsibility in the team, but also there was an acceptance of imperfect progression, which enabled me really to grow, to become who I became, and trying to get that across into my team and the wider team is like crucial, really, because we can grow as big, but if we lose that family ethos, I don't know. And I don't know how easy it's going to be to grow too big and retain that, because people's management styles are very different, aren't they?
Yeah.
So
How are you? Are you planning to do that? Is it through, I guess, training for your managers?
Yeah, well, I think training is the key. I mean, not just training about the Building Safety Act or changes in regulation, but also training in people management and things like that. Having said that, I've had no training in people management, but it's just something that I'm quite empathetic. So I sort of can feel if someone's upset or, needs some assistance, and I'm quite approachable. And, a problem shared is a problem halved, isn't it? Or whatever the phrase is.
Just jumping in here to interrupt the episode to remind you to subscribe to our podcast if you aren't already. Enjoy. So you were talking about management styles and how you actually haven't had any specific management training. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's probably something that you just evolve into, really.
Do you offer management training now to your managers?
We do, actually. And saying that, we are actually doing some director training over the next 6 months. But that's probably more for the new up and coming directors. We offer training to the people, but coming up, but not necessarily to me at the top necessarily. I mean, I would have gone on it if I felt I needed it, but I think the fact that it's just listening to people, really, and when they need to work out priorities, you help them work out priorities, and always have your door open. When I'm in the office, I go in the office to not really get too much done myself. It's more for the staff, and so they can come and talk to you. And
I'm curious actually to get your opinion on it. And we were just speaking off camera a second ago. How do you promote a good manager? Is it because they're a good architect, or is it because they're a good manager? But can you actually train and teach somebody to be a good manager or leader, or is it something which is natural within somebody?
I think you can train someone to be a good manager. So if they're a good architect, it's easy to train them to become a good manager. So I think that can be instilled. It's just realizing and having those open and honest conversations. In staff appraisals, it's just as much about them giving you feedback about yourself rather than you giving them feedback, because, you know, it's got to be a two-way thing. And I think as long as a manager or a leader, you know, you're open to those suggestions, because at the end of the day, being a good leader is surrounding yourself with people that are probably better than you, to be fair, and just helping guide them. And it's just having that, you know, any relationship is all about give and take, isn't it? And I think listening to the staff, we've got staff voice, so it's sort of on the intranet page, which has got all our technical indexes. But if you've got a gripe about something or somebody, or you can put it in staff voice, and it's completely
online suggestion box sort of thing.
Yeah, but it no one knows who it is, so people can be very honest, and then that feedback is then fed back through. There's a meeting with health first aiders that are in that committee, and they review the staff voice comments. Obviously, I think they're vetted just in case there's any personal attacks on anyone. But generally, you know, that's never happened. But, you know, it allows people to address things if they do. And our appraisal process, which is sort of every 6 months, is, you know, much more about how they feel and getting feedback, as I said, from them, not just, you know, you're not directing people, are you? You're leading them and working with them. And I always think of myself very much as a colleague, really. I mean, you know, you mentioned our bid team, our sort of manager of the bid team really annoys me because she calls me boss, which irritates me. And I wish I'd not let her know that it irritates me, because now she just does it all the time and thinks it's funny.
No, she does it on purpose.
But yeah, so I don't, that's not how, I don't manage with a, you know, iron fist. I manage through sort of hard work and respect, really, which, and empowering the staff to, you know, make mistakes. We've got a great QA system in place. The mistakes never get out of Bailey's, but how can you want your staff to be innovative if you're going to tell them, if you're going to make them psychologically scared to take, you know, calculated risks in what they do?
You've been really lucky to have those skills then, haven't you? You know, that you've trained along the way. And you mentioned, like, you know, empathy and emotional intelligence. Can you train that side of things? Because that's a huge part of leadership and management.
I don't know.
Well.
I think we are we are at the moment in the process of trying to alter some of the characteristics and, you know, upskill some of our SLT team. But yeah, I'm sure you can, but, you know, you can't change what people are necessarily. People can draw up different things. So we put all of our senior leadership team on the on CRISP training, which is the red, yellow, green and blue thing. You know, so if you're red, you're fiery red. If you're blue, you're quite data driven, love spreadsheets, and, you know, always need everything properly planned out. Sunshine yellow's more business development, and the green, sort of earth green, which is you know, somewhere between sort of blue and yellow, really. So everyone knew who, and we did the EDs first, and then we shared our profiles with the senior leadership team, and then they did theirs as well. And that we thought would help, you know.
Did you make decisions off that?
Yeah, well, we did, because I think a business needs sort of a collection of all of those different types of people. You know? I mean, as an example, I was green with a lot of blue, quite a lot of yellow, and hardly any red, to be fair.
What was blue? Sorry, what was blue?
Blue's quite data, you know, driven and analytical and stuff like that.
Have you naturally fallen into those kind of
so a
responsibilities?
QS is obviously more likely to be blue. You know, a business selling BS is yellow.
Yeah.
But I was sort of, my final colour was green. But I don't know whether it changes when you did the test. But it was really quite bizarre. And I think we're probably redoing that in a few weeks, because we've obviously got a bigger pool of people now. But it was really weird. When I read the feedback, I went up to Yasmin, who's our heads up our HR department. I said, "Have you spoken to my wife about this?" And she was like, "No." And I was like, "Well, it's ridiculously accurate." And, I mean, I just did it on a Saturday night with a glass of wine, which possibly why there wasn't much red, but I don't know. Yeah. And yeah, it was ridiculously accurate. And I was just a bit blown away, to be honest. I mean, there was stuff that wasn't, but there was stuff that was.
Got the general sort of quite right.
Yeah.
Have you leaned into that then? Have like all of you people that have done that in the management and leadership team, have you leaned into that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think you realise that, some of the SLT would then pinpoint which ED to go to, because depending on what outcome they wanted, which is quite clever. Which is quite clever in itself. But also it enabled us to know who's, who in terms of succession planning, who's good to go in which pot and pool and everything else. So it was a very beneficial thing. I think that the staff enjoyed it as well. So they're doing another session. I think next week we've got the introductory, and then it's over the next 6 months of stuff. I really
like that, because I've got a bit here that I wanted to talk about and speak about, is like delegation, and your position. Obviously, you've gone from architect up to sort of executive director, and with the growth of the business and how much growth there's been, you must have had worn lots of different hats sort of along the way with that. So I'll be curious to know like what you see yourself as now. So you could call yourself architect then, but then like what you actually do now, and how you've gone about like delegating all this different type of responsibilities to other people to sort of be where you are now.
Yeah, I'd say delegation is probably one of my weaknesses, to be honest. I struggle to let go. I think most of the EDs probably struggle to let go because we've sort of controlled everything for so long. But I think you've just got to trust people, and it's going back to that, empowering people and allowing people to grow really from, imperfect processes. And, we've got a good senior leadership team. So, and it's just finding those right people to set up the right teams. So Plymouth now is, pretty self-contained. Cornwall, sort of focusing quite a lot of time on training one of the guys down there into taking on more responsibility. Maidstone and Bristol have got architectural directors in them. And so, it's just basically just trying to let go. But the key thing now is just trying to, because the more we spread ourselves, the less I'm going to be in any office. But I do still like doing, not doing project work, but getting involved in project work, because you don't want to forget your roots. I think I joked earlier about the fact that I can't do any sketching anymore. But I at some point I do, and that's why I like doing some of the bids, because you do actually do the diagrams that relate to the answer, or you do put in a concept sketch just to, whet the appetite of the possible client. They may not ask for it, but I'm quite a graphic person as well, so putting something in that might make them think, oh, that could look quite good actually. So the delegation thing is just finding the right people, and we've got a really good team of people, and a lot of them have been in the business far longer than I have. Okay. So we've got 3 directors of architecture below the 2 EDs currently, and Paul Chappell joined the practice in 1998, I think.
Wow.
So he's been there a while. So he's an architectural technologist from trade. So, they do know the business, but it's just the hardest thing is probably some of the bid writing and some of the softer skills, rather than the architecture's quite, I've got everyone there to do that really now. So it's just passing on some of these softer skills, which doesn't necessarily have to be someone in the architectural team.
No. When it comes to finding the right people to promote up or to go through the SLT leadership team at Bailey Partnership, what's the process of that? And when you say find the right people, what does that person look like?
Do they put their hand up, or do you go to them?
Bit of both, really. I don't know. I don't think I ever put my hand up. It just happened. So there's people that are like that. And then other people that do put their hands up. And then there's people that you want them to progress, but they're quite happy where they are. And you're like, you've got so much.
Can you ever change those type of people?
I think I have managed it, yes.
Have you?
So the answer to that is yes. But it's just finding them. And I think sometimes the people that put their hand up aren't always the right people to do it, because if you just put your head down, knuckle down and do a good job, it's going to happen anyway. But maybe, I don't know whether that's a generational thing. Sort of going back to how you find people again, I've just thought about Linda, who she may be out in the office out there, but she's Linda van der Velden. She plays for Exeter Chiefs, and I was at a Gallagher's rugby corporate rugby event, and she was on stage doing a Q&A with some of the male rugby players. It was a men's game. And she was just really articulate and, answered the questions really well, even though she's from the Netherlands. So English isn't a native language. And Cheryl from Gallagher introduced me to her. And strangely, she has a similar background to me. She did a design sort of degree in the Netherlands. And I didn't realise the sort of pay gap of professional rugby players in the female, so she needed a job alongside it, and she worked for another small architects, but wanted to sort of do something bigger and things like that. So she came across a couple of years ago, and she's been really good, really successful, because initially it was a bit like, oh, she'll be really good from a marketing perspective and things like that. But you've got to give people a chance. It's all about, taking those calculated risks on people and them taking a risk with us, because she could have stayed where she was, but she came with us. So now we sponsor her as a player, we employ her, and she's about to enroll in what's evolved from the course I did on RIBA in office learning. And that's not from favoritism, that's just from her being able to, again, do good work whilst juggling her rugby career and everything else. And I appreciate it may be rugby's lost, but it will be architecture's game, I'm sure, when she does become a fully fledged architect. So she's just enrolling at the moment.
When it comes to like promotion and giving people these next opportunities, do they have to do the role before they're promoted, or are they then promoted into the role?
Well, some automatically just do the role, just progress. And that's when you probably can convince them, because when you then go through the job description and they say, oh, no, I don't want the added responsibility, you're like, well, actually, you're doing that, you're doing that, you're doing that, you're doing that. We have promoted people into a role who are doing sort of, 40% of what they should be doing in the expectation that they then, up their game. But in some cases, that's not always quite as successful. So my preference personally, but obviously there's other managers in the business, would be that, they've got to sort of prove that they're doing that role, because it's not just about, doing your day job. It's about doing that little bit more sometimes, which is enjoyable, whether that be, being a trustee for a school, or doing a career fair, or whatever, they take well-being out of, as well as, benefits the business is sort of critical, really. So, but majority, I think, do automatically do it. And we've got quite refined job descriptions now, which makes the recruitment thing a lot easier, and also the appraisal process simpler. Whereas before it was, when I joined, it was, when I got promoted from senior architect to associate, I didn't really know. You just sort
there wasn't a lot in it. Sort of thing. It was like, right, you're an associate now.
Yeah. So having that structure, people want, especially the younger generations, aren't they? They're very specific.
They want the progression. They want to know what they're going on to next. So that was like going to lead on to my next question: is whether, like an architect, for example, how do you promote somebody? And you gave a good example from like let's say an architect to a senior architect and how do you like help people progress just in general throughout the business? Because is there something like, it doesn't feel like there's something very obvious that they have to do and become to move on to that next level? Can it be like quite different for each individual, or is it very sort of across the board?
No, I think it needs to be on a personal level, really, because some architects, we try to create fully rounded architects that can do all RIBA stages, but you do find that some people are better at sort of post-planning stages and, project or lead design and management sort of stuff. And others are better pre-planning, sort of doing that early concept stage. But obviously you need to work all the way through and deliver a project successfully to really become a senior architect. And we have a sort of rule that you can't really do that until you've been qualified for a minimum of 2 years and things like that. But, you do need to have been able to, delivered projects and prove that you can deal with site queries, you can deal with delivering RFIs in accordance with the time and contract and everything else.
There's a balance of both there, then, isn't there? Really,
Yeah.
I suppose, with titles. You can do this, but at the same time, you can put people on different development plans, can't you, depending on what they want to do and where they go.
Yeah, and you move people around because obviously to mentor people in their part 3s, we get part 1s come in and then that they're sort of usually working on feasibility sort of early stage stuff because they're quite good at Photoshop and concept and things. And then when they come back to do part 2, they're sort of after their part 2 for their sort of placement, they're still quite green on the technical side. But in order for them to meet their part 3 requirements, you need to push them sort of in that technical side of things. So it's quite difficult because although from a productivity perspective, it'd probably be better just to leave them there, but you can't really pigeonhole anyone in that because, diversity of work and, RIBA stages is how you help retain the staff as well. So, at the moment we've moved one gen more into sort of technical design, which, they're doing well on, but they're really good at early stage, and we've sort of flipped the other person into the early stage. So you've just got to mix it up really and make sure that progression's there. And it's the same for the our chartered architectural technologists as well that we've got.
Yeah,
because they need to do concept and technology, and we do think of ourselves as one team.
Yeah,
sounds quite nurtured, the process to grow at Bailey Partnership. Do you think that's got a big impact on the culture and why you do have such good retention rate?
Possibly, yeah. I think so, because people, well, if you nurture anything, then you sort of feel at home, don't you?
Yeah. And do you think that's come from top down or bottom up cultural wise?
Get it in there.
That's a good question.
That is a good question, but I'm going to probably answer it quite politically. I think it depends. I think it comes from the people, to be honest.
What is it? How would you describe the culture of Bailey Partnership? Start there.
Well, I think it's just a Bailey family, really. I mean, the pressure sometimes is, I don't just think about my family. I'm thinking about all the other families and their mortgages and stuff like that, which probably isn't good for my well-being. But you do, because, and when, recruitment people phone me up and I've got staff saying, oh, well, we're a bit out of a stretch, you've got to have that forward thinking, well, actually, I've got 56 mouths to feed in the architectural team already. I'm not going to employ anyone else. Let's just, manage the situation, because you don't want to sort of act reactively and let people go. I'm not sort of, I don't like that in life, really. So I think people respect that, and they sort of feel that the senior leadership team have got their back, really, which adds an element of trust. So I think the youngsters, we've got like a snug and things like that. So people sort of, do a lot of things outside of work together, especially the younger groups. They meet up at the weekends and play golf or whatever. So there is that sort of family commitment. And also I think if you've got that trust and, I don't know, I don't quite know what the word is, but if you've got that embedment into that company, then you will always want to do well for it. So, when we've got deadlines, a lot of the time I don't have to even ask my team, to help a bit more. It's just like, oh, there they are, they're doing it. But they know that then they, don't need to come in the day after or whatever. It's sort of on output, not necessarily time, if that makes sense.
Have you been intentional at all from like the senior leadership about sort of trying to create a culture?
I think the family ethos is what Bailey Partnership has always been married. When I joined, I was just like, crikey, from BDP was to this, it's actually quite good. And the family barbecues are great because, you've got bouncy castles for Litleys and, stuff like that. And it just, I think people just feel more at home then. But the problem or the challenge is going to be trying to retain that. And a few people have expressed, now we're 200, over 200. How do we retain that? But I think the answer to that is, having more offices, because more offices doesn't only help us have less transport burden on our, net zero and the emissions and all of that, because we've got more local offices. It helps us create, clusters of families that then all come together, at Christmas, but we don't do it at Christmas. We do it in the summer generally for the Bailey Fest. And then everyone gets to know each other and, have a beer or go paddleboarding or sedgewaying or life drawing we did. So
that's quite interesting actually, because I've actually not heard that before about like having more offices to better the culture. A lot of people say it's the other way around, don't they? Or say like, one office so that everybody's together. But as you grow as a big business, it's obviously very difficult to have a family of 200 people, isn't it? A sort of thing that are all like in the same office, all in each other's pockets, know everything. But you're right, if you have like, clusters of pockets and within those locations where they're obviously working very directly with different offices and collaborating, then you are sort of creating a family within the family.
Yeah, exactly. And what we do architecturally is we have monthly sort of presentations. So, if someone's joined, they do a presentation on what they've done, or it was about lessons learned and knowledge sharing really initially. But as soon as new people come in, because, regardless of what level, they may have a skill set that someone in Maidstone wants, but they're in Plymouth. So it sort of breaks down that barrier and encourages interaction amongst the team. So we do that every month in the architectural team. And then we do try to bring everyone together at least sort of once a year on top of the Bailey Fest. But the Bailey Fest is the key thing, because that's when you get all the disciplines together. But you do find like a couple of years ago, we employed an associate architect in Bristol and an associate architect in Bury, and for the office up there. And, just because they joined similar time, both of those two get together quite a lot. And Flora, because she's sort of the head of healthcare, she was delivering a project, a new endoscopy building in Colchester, which is obviously quite close to Bury. Used to go and see ASRA over there. So, things automatically sort of merge. But I suppose looking at Bailey Partnership as a whole, sorry, I touched the mic. As a whole, 200 would be difficult, but I think you can have families within families.
So that's a real big benefit of that, and I definitely see that now, maybe. But like there are probably some negatives and difficulties that come with that. Is finding the right kind of people to like lead these offices, and then sort of getting the culture to trickle down to them and set the standards that you guys have set to everybody, or like more people. How do you do that? Is that a valid point?
I think it is, yeah, because we talked about it earlier, didn't we? Everyone's management style is different, and just trying to not lose that. Also, the bigger you get, the more structured you need to become, the more, checklist, you need to become, the less,
and you maybe lose a bit of family vibe there, don't you? With more,
there is a challenge that you could do, but you obviously do need those processes in place for, to keep the quality assurance and everything else. I mean, obviously architecture's 7 years and CIAT is similar as well. So a lot of the people in my discipline are quite structured in themselves. But yeah, it's just trying to find those right people. And that's when I get involved in interviews. It's not necessarily about the technical, interview. I don't necessarily need to look through people's portfolios, or the interview I talked about earlier about the garlic in the orange. That was actually for building services engineering. I just go along to see whether they'll fit or belong, and that's what a lot of the EDs necessarily do, is just to try to make sure we get that right candidate, and we won't rush into something just because we need it. It needs to be the right person, because having someone who's not correct in the team can really create a ripple or a wave effect, can't it, and create quite a negative atmosphere. So, we just, you can't be reactive on recruitment. You need to make sure you get the right person. And touch wood, fortunately, we've been very lucky with that, and everyone's fitted in very well in the architectural team. I can't speak for the others, to be fair, but I'm sure I haven't heard anything.
It's another good example though of like with your recruitment is, looking for the person, not more so, it's obviously important, but like alongside the skills. And if you're looking for the right kind of person, they've got the right sort of management leadership skills, you obviously can't tell that from interviews most of the time, can you? But if you see like the right kind of qualities, you then don't have to do as much training and have to be as intentional with it.
Yeah, we have appointed a talent and acquisition manager as well recently, who's basically going to engage with, you know, recruiters like yourselves and everyone else. So she's come across relatively recently to help maintain that talent search, really. And also we found that the bigger we got, you know, there was a bit of unjoined up thinking across the business. So if everything goes through one person, it, you know, she sort of helps control everything. And it just adds that
a bit more streamlined,
isn't it? A bit more streamlined
the process.
So she'll go through and filter people that she thinks appropriate for the business, both from a personal and, you know, characteristic side of things, because she'll do the first pass. And the technical side, if she thinks they'll fit, they'll then go straight through for the more technical interview, and then they'll probably come to me if, you know, they pass that, depending on the level. Obviously, I don't interview everyone, but anyone sort of senior leadership up, I will.
You would, yeah. Another question I was going to have, and maybe like to start a question with an example from our side, is Conquer, the recruitment business. We've maybe not realised how important like the processes and the structures are within just a business. How important they are to grow and like add different people onto it, because you know, as like directors, you can't do everything yourself, can you? You've got to have scalability with that sort of thing. So were you guys really intentional with all your sort of structures and processes that you had in place? Are they like all streamlined in one sort of place for people to access, or has that just happened naturally for you guys?
I think a bit of both, to be fair. We've targeted certain sectors and gone out and got those people, or we've targeted people that we needed, like our digital media person. We knew we were weak on that, and we needed someone who has more of a strategic plan. Hence, we were talking about the need to put more projects up rather than just all of our wellbeing stuff. So we do look at our strengths and weaknesses and basically have a lessons learned on how we can improve the business. And then we will strategically go out and do that, but also we'll strategically think, okay, well, you know, where's the succession? So, you know, in Maidstone, the lead of the architectural team up there, he's sort of, you know, I don't think he's close to retirement age, but he's very blue. So he likes to plan everything, you know, really far ahead. So we've already got his successor in place, even though he's probably going to be around for the next 8 years. Just, you know, and she's fitted in and she's adding a completely different, because they're different people, but she's brought another skill set. She's really good at urban master planning and housing and things like that. So we do go out there and strategically look at stuff. So if we need an architect, I will look at, well, which sector are we not that strong on, and then I will try to target the person to fill that hole, as it were, because obviously if they're coming in to take over a management role, they can also bring a different level of experience. You know, we've got so much education experience in the team. You wouldn't want necessarily someone who's good at education. You'd want someone who's really good at housing, or, you know, like Flora was really good at healthcare and done a lot of it. So she came in 2-3 years ago.
What about from like a technology point of view at all? Is there anything which has like really streamlined all of your processes and procedures so that everybody knows exactly where everything is and everybody knows, you know, what to do, sort of thing?
Well, we've got our intranet. So on there, we've got our designer's reference library, which has got all the RIBA checklists and everything else on, which we basically update probably every quarter. And in there is obviously all the health and safety CDM, because we do a lot of that as well. And we've got the Building Safety Act, PDBR sort of competency checklist there, which helps guide them. But also just having these checklists allow people to know what they're expected of. But we do have quite a structure to our training, and I think we're sort of talking about how we can improve that, because we're getting so big. It may be that we need someone who just solely looks after training rather than, you know, someone dedicated from each team, just so it sort of becomes more of a Bailey Academy, really. But we haven't really discussed that. That's just me thinking out loud, really.
Those are sort of things which help scalability, don't they?
Exactly. And we've got people in the business that are really good at mentoring, and we give we do a buddy system. So someone comes in, you give them a buddy so they can ask those stupid questions. And I encourage the leadership team to also get the youngsters to check their work, because it instills the fact that, regardless of where you are in the business, sometimes if you've looked at something too much, you can't see the wood through the trees. So they could just look at it and pick up a typo that the person that wrote it, even though they're a senior leader, may not have picked up. And it's just instilling that collective responsibility, really, that I talked about earlier, I think.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Yeah. What are the plans for Bailey Partnership then? You sort of mentioned you've been through a bit of a planning review or coming up to it. Where do you see the sort of business going? And actually, out of curiosity, when you started, did you see yourself being here now and the business being here now?
Well, no, I think I kind of thought I'd move to the West Country for an easier life.
See what happens. Yeah.
But unfortunately, I kind of thrive a bit on stress and stuff. So it just sort of, happened. And, we said earlier, everything happens for a reason. So, whatever, one door opens, another one closes, as it were. And that's been very much what's been happening. Strategically, I'll speak for the architecture team at Bailey Partnership, not necessarily all the disciplines, but from the exercise that we did, where I sent a sort of a template business plan out to all the leads of each sector, saying, "Can I have your thoughts?" It did involve, how much staff you can see, and which offices and things like that. And then we've sort of refined it all back. So architecturally, we're proposing to possibly grow 10% year on year for the next 5 years, which some say is slightly pessimistic. I think with the world where it is at the moment, the Chancellor's about to do a budget in a few weeks, isn't she? And interest rates, I think, are going up again, and who knows what Trump's going to do next. I thought that was probably a calculated risk, because I think some year we may reduce, and other years we will improve on that. But I think 10% year on year for the next 5 years is probably quite ambitious enough. But also you've got, the technology that's coming in, and the innovation in technology and how that will assist, like AI, those sorts of things. You've got to embrace those things. You can't be scared of it. So architecturally, yes, okay, our turnover may grow, but that doesn't necessarily relate to people, because, you can improve efficiencies through the use of AI and things like that. Although you can't rely on AI, which is why I don't think architects are ever going to be made redundant from it, because, you need a responsible person to check it. It'll streamline the process. It'll help
make things easier, won't it?
4 car park layouts in 5 minutes, but the client may say, "I like that one," and when you properly plan it out, it probably won't work, but you'll know roughly the layout that you need to get to work for that client. So there will be economies in that. So that's where I envisage the architectural team going. But that it's all interlinked, don't you? So our Manchester office hasn't got architecture, but for them to meet their strategic plan, we need to put architecture in it. So it's just trying to join all this up. And I don't know the answer at the moment, because that's what we're doing currently, is trying to join all the dots.
Sorry, was that 10% like headcount? Was that 10% in terms of profitability? Is it more about profitability for you? Do you look at it, or is it headcount?
No, that was more sort of turnover.
So, yes, okay.
Not profitability necessarily, but turnover, which is kind of related to headcount. But yeah. I personally think it may be more, but I don't know. I think the world's in quite an odd place at the moment.
It's a strange spot, yeah. What we're hearing a lot of is companies, instead of like focusing on headcount, which I think is what's happened quite a lot the last 3 or 4 years, is very much focusing on like turnover and profitability more so. Just to get more out of the people that you've got, because it is so difficult to find people as well, isn't it? And sort of go into new markets.
Also, if you look at the trend, you grow and then you're slightly less profitable, because obviously you've got new people learning new systems, learning new things, and then you grow again. And so it's sort of, you kind of need to regroup almost, which is what we're kind of doing this year, to be fair, in the architectural team, and improving those efficiencies and, updating all the requirements and things like that. But, the fact that we've got fire engineering now, and, we've got, I think I looked the other day I was doing a bid, and it was prove your competency on the Building Safety Act, and on the CIAT, HRB and non-HRB, PDBR, register, 31% of the people on there are Bailey Partnership across the whole country.
Really?
Wow.
So, you sort of think because we've invested the time, and to be fair, the people that invested the time also went out and did CPDs for all our clients, which is how we keep repeat business, because we do CPDs for them, informing them on changes in legislation and stuff like that. So I think, you just need to stay ahead of the game.
Does Bailey Partnership have a mission statement, or like an aim, or like a goals sort of thing?
Well, we do in the marketing strategy, but I think my ambition is to be the sort of the trusted partner for multidisciplinary services, sort of for safely and sustainably preparing the world for the digital future, I think. And then just continually to foster the innovation and excellence that, we've sort of been known to have. And how we do that, or I think we are doing it, but how we continue to do that and continue to grow, because I think we've got so many people out there now helping us grow and bring in work, which is great, and build our reputation. I can't see us not continuing to grow, to be fair, as long as we continue to do it in an organic, sustainable way, and just that we don't lose our principles along the way, which is key. And that is going back to the whole getting the right person. You don't want the clove of garlic. You want the segment of orange.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Well, just to wrap it up then, Maddie.
Yeah, one way that we're trialing, so you're our first guest that's going to do it. Finish with the last bit of advice. So if you could go back to when you first started as a business leader, what advice would you give to yourself? Take a minute to think about it.
I don't know. I'd probably say life's not all about work sometimes, to be fair. Because you do get completely enthralled in it. And I'm someone that, does care about all the staff. So, you do work very hard to make sure that you can provide for everyone. And sometimes that's at the detriment of other things. So that's probably what I'd say. Whether I'd listen to it, probably not. But
but you'll give it anyway.
I'd give it a good go.
Well, thank you so much, Giles.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. And
good stuff.
All the best.